Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast, your Nicolas Cage movie review podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Derek, and your other host, Ryan, is right here with me.
That's right. Of course, not in the same room, just in the same Zoom.
That's right. Might as well be the same room, really. I mean, you're right. I could reach out and touch you.
Please don't.
Okay, I won't.
I do not consent.
I'll respect your bubble.
I appreciate that. And yes, we're here to talk about a movie.
Yeah, not just any movie. The 2002 John Woo film, Windtalkers.
Which is a film that exists.
Which is a World War II film that
Some
exists.
would say, yeah.
Stars, of course, the great Nicolas Cage, along with Adam Beach, Peter Stormare, Mark Ruffalo,
Noah Emmerich,
Christian Slater. Yeah. Quite the cast. Jason Isaacs shows up for a minute. We can talk about that. Frances O'Connor is the one woman in the entire film.
That's right.
Literally.
Who you might know from Bedazzled. You never saw that? The Brendan Fraser movie?
I never saw it.
Okay, well, I recognized her immediately, and I was like, what's she from? And so we had to look it up.
And she's from Bedazzled. Okay.
That's what it is, yeah.
Fair enough.
Classic movie.
Classic. This movie is about basically I'm gonna tell you what it's about. I'm not gonna read the synopsis. I'll just tell you. This is a World War II film about Navajo code talkers who were assigned a Marine to, so to speak, protect them while they were trying to take Japanese territory in the Pacific during that time. And Nicolas Cage plays one of those Marines who has to protect the code.
Right.
Now, the Navajo Windtalkers were real. There is a basis in reality in this movie, but I don't believe the characters are based on specific real people.
I mean, John Woo is known for his attention to detail in historical documentaries, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. This is not Nicolas Cage's first outing with John Woo or Christian Slater, for that matter.
It's true.
You know, they did another little movie together.
I had no idea that John Woo directed this movie, and really, it's missing a lot of the John Woo trademarks that you would normally find in a John Woo movie. So I don't know. Maybe that's why I didn't enjoy this movie as much, but.
You mean you didn't like this as much as Face Off?
No, I mean, I didn't like this as much as any other John Woo movie I've ever seen.
No, that's fair. I mean, you're right. It does not have the standard trademarks. There are some birds.
But no doves.
But no doves.
Just some pelicans flying around.
Yeah. Yeah. But he got them in somehow. He's like, how can I still get birds in this movie?
Yeah, but I don't think the hallmark of John Woo is just birds. I think it's doves specifically.
I mean, in general, I think this was
almost every movie has birds in some scene somewhere, maybe flying above a set or something.
Yeah, but this was like a shot. Like, I think he wished they were doves, and they were like, you can't have doves on an island in Japan in 1943.
It's John Woo. If he could put doves on it, I would have made the movie better. I mean, it certainly wouldn't have made it worse. We'll put it that way.
That's fair.
So the way we usually do these things is that I take notes throughout the movie, and however many days later we go through those notes on the podcast, and I try and remember what the hell I meant by that note, and Derek tries to help me figure it out. This is basically a puzzle-solving podcast.
It just happens to be about Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, about Nicolas Cage, where we just try and solve riddles of notes I've taken from a movie.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I guess we can go ahead and get started.
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
Get back to the beginning of my notes here. I got a few pages. Yeah, John Woo is my first note because I did not. It's when you look up like his, or when you think about his contribution to films, this is not a movie that really pops up very often or at all because like I said, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's not the normal John Woo fare for sure. I'm not entirely sure why he wanted to do this.
Maybe he wanted people to take him a little more seriously.
Maybe.
But I don't think this movie would be that in the end.
Hmm.
This next note is potential suggestion for a new box for Arcadio Bingo.
Ooh, okay.
Helicopter landscape shots. And it could also be cityscape.
Right. So you mean like the B-roll of the
Right, just like people.
establishing shots.
Right, which seems to be the entrance of almost every movie that we've watched. It's
I'll make a
crazy.
note of that. Helicopter established shots. Okay.
Yeah, or some sort of like aerial, landscape shots of some or cityscape shots of some kind. We basically start in with Nicolas Cage deep into the heart of battle with like 5 guys or 10 guys, maybe something like that. And they get ambushed and there's big fights, lots of gunshots, lots of death. Nick Cage stabs somebody with a trench knife, which is I put as a melee weapon kill, or a melee weapon, uses a melee weapon for our bingo, Cajo bingo.
Oh yeah.
Which
Lots of bingo on this one.
he
Lots of
actually
bingo
doesn't use a lot of melee
squares.
weapons throughout this. That's
No.
really the only one, I think. So that was a good snag. But yeah, basically we watch him slowly run out of ammo with the rest of his, crew, and basically everybody dies. A
I'm
grenade
glad
gets.
that like they finally did run out of ammo because for like what felt like 10 minutes they were complaining that they were out of ammo, but they just kept mowing people down.
I will say one thing that this movie did really well, kind of ahead of its time, is that it showed a lot of reloading and it
Yeah.
showed, a lot of people running out of ammunition, which is something that kind of since John Wick took off, that was something that did really well, like realistic gun usage,
Hmm.
which John Woo again not traditionally known for. Um, Gun usage, yes. Realistic, no. But when John Wick came out and started showing that, then having to reload and do tactical reloads and things like that, then it started becoming a trend in action movies. But this movie coming out 20 years before, well, maybe not 20 years before the first John Wick, but 10 plus years before the first John Wick, it's pretty impressive to see them running out of ammo. Like you can literally see at one point Nicolas Cage running around with magazines of ammo on his side, and
Hmm.
he's pulling those out and reloading, and then they slowly go down to where he has less and less.
Yeah, and I mean they also had to be accurate for the time. Like this is a World War II film. These are not guns that were being used in the 90s and early 2000s, not much anyway. And so they had to get that right, and they seemed to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that big of a gun guy, but like I think the gun he was using most of the movie was a Thompson. Like, when you think about Tommy guns,
Hmm.
like old gangsters use, that's basically what they used. I think in the early part of the movie, he had a drum clip
He did.
like a Tommy gun would use. But then later in the movie, he uses them without that and just like a standard clip.
Hmm.
But it was interesting seeing that kind of stuff in there. Yeah, I mean, obviously the drum clips you can't just strap a bunch of those to your body and run around because they're very heavy. But yeah. So in this beginning part, yeah, there's you basically slowly watch everybody die, and then they throw a grenade at Nicolas Cage and it lands next to him and blows him up real good.
Yeah, I mean just a little bit.
Just a little bit like around the side of his face, but other than that, he's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then we get kind of a time jump, and he's at this hospital, and you see his ear is kind of mangled a little bit, and he has some scarring on that side of his face, but otherwise he's pretty much fine, other than like severe PTSD.
Yeah. The big injury, the physical injury, is he has like an inner ear rupture, so he has no like equilibrium.
Right.
So
So he can't ride a bicycle anymore, which was
that's
one of
sad.
his established hobbies
Yeah, clearly.
early in the movie. Um, so yeah, it kind of shows some shots with him and this nurse. What I assume she's a nurse. She's dressed like a nurse. Which
Well,
is
she's giving
Rita.
him meds later and stuff,
That's
so I
true.
think she's definitely
She does sneak him some meds that, probably weren't prescribed.
she's a
Um,
medical professional.
yes. From Bedazzled. But yeah, she's kind of flirting with him and he's not really returning any of that. and she goes in and helps him cheat on a hearing test so that
Mhm.
he can pass and go back into war and probably die. Um, and then he gets like an interview and how he talks about how he wants to kill Japs. So I put casual racism for that. I
There is
don't know if you
so much racism in this movie, man.
I mean, probably true to the time period, but yeah, definitely
Yeah,
uncomfortable.
yeah, not inaccurate, but just awful.
Yeah, not fun to watch in a movie. I don't go to a movie and go, man, I really hope I see some good racism in this movie.
Now there was a term that came up that I hadn't heard before. I'm not going to say it or anything, but
I can probably guess which one it
it
is.
was a word for the Japanese
Yeah, a
soldiers that
three-letter
started.
word.
Yeah, it started with an
Yeah.
N, and I was
Yes.
not familiar with that term, so that was
Mm.
interesting. I mean, they are all terrible,
I
but
don't know where that's the word is derived from, but I have heard that word
mm,
before. Not from anybody that I care about, but just in general existing on the planet. I've heard that word before, so
sure,
I at least had some knowledge of what they meant by that word.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, then so he's in his recovery phase, and we get a really great shot of him like slow motion running while like there's waves crashing on the beach, like, and these aren't just your casual beach waves; these are like mini tsunami type waves. I mean,
Well,
they're
they're out in
just
the Pacific
huge,
somewhere.
huge waves, and
Yeah,
him slow motion running, not shirtless or anything. But I do want to point out that this is kind of the peak Cage physicality era. Not that long after Face Off and Con Air, he was in really good shape in this movie,
yeah. I would say this is a little after his peak, though. Like, right, this is after.
movie wise. But I'm
Yeah.
saying like his physicality for movies. I think that this was still in that same.
Mm,
I would put him on par in this movie with anything he did in Face Off or Con Air physically. Like he
gotcha.
looked really good
Yeah, yeah,
still.
absolutely.
Um, Better than like Ghost Rider.
Sure.
And he looked good in Ghost Rider. So CGI abs. Um, so yeah, he does it. They do an interview with like I don't know Marine stuff, but some higher ranking official, and they ask him if he wants this assignment to protect the code, and they say, well, you're protecting this Navajo Native American, but your ultimate goal is to make sure that he doesn't get captured and make sure that if that he doesn't get captured alive by any means necessary. Basically, he doesn't say it outright, but he basically says, "I want you to kill your fellow Marine if it looks like he's about to be captured."
Yeah, so we did kind of skip over the Adam Beach character's introduction, Yazi Ben Yazi, because so the general premise here, right, is that certain Native Americans, in this case Navajo, signed up to be, part of the war effort, and I don't know how true, like to what extent this happened, but the Japanese apparently were extremely good at breaking our military codes until somebody stumbled across the Navajo language, which is very unique compared to the other languages around at that time, especially between Western languages. And so, yeah, these code talkers they learned special code using Navajo. So it's framed like you're protecting the code, not the human being,
Well,
and that's
they
dark as
initially
hell.
say it as you're going to be assigned to this person and you're going to protect them, but ultimately your goal is to protect the code,
Yeah, which is
implying that you need to murder another soldier to, do that.
so that sets that up pretty early on that's going
Hmm.
to come to a head.
And he's got a friend that he's going in with, White Horse.
Hmm.
Um, they meet on the bus when they get picked up at the reservation. Um,
Well, they
I
already
assume
knew
it's
each other.
reservation. Well,
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. No,
yeah.
they met up again, and it's
Oh,
kind of
oh,
implied that they know each other
sorry.
when they
Yep.
meet up on the bus.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they ship out, and they're out with Nick Cage and his crew now, and he accepts the mission, and we kind of get introduced to Christian Slater at this point, who's another Marine that has the same assignment, but they can't really talk about it. So that's a weird scene, but they both know that each other has the same assignment. But Christian Slater had White Horse
Hmm.
protect in quotes, um, and then Nick Cage had Yazi to protect. So, um, so yeah, they meet up, and there's a scene for like where they're having breakfast or dinner or something, some meal, and Yasi introduces himself to Nick Cage's character, and as he's introducing him into him, he spills Nick Cage's coffee on the ground, and then he goes to give Nick Cage his coffee, and then spills that on him,
All over
and
his food too.
all over his food, yeah, and so yeah, that Nick Cage at this point has been pretty cold to everybody. Uh, Not really like wanting to get involved with people. He just wants to go kill. Even when Yasi goes and introduces himself, he just doesn't seem to care. He just tells him to get out of the way because he's blocking his view, and his view is basically a seagull eating some garbage.
Well, because I
So
think there's two things that motivate Nicolas Cage's character, Joe Enders. One is revenge from what we saw at the beginning of the movie,
yeah,
right? And two is not getting close to Ben Yazi because he's pretty sure he's going to have to kill him later.
right. Or maybe just in case he has to kill him, he doesn't want to be close to him.
Right.
So then we do get an introduction to Mark Ruffalo, who
Yeah.
has a mustache.
It's
My note was
glorious.
mustache Ruffalo,
That's right.
which is always a good look. Very classic to the era. Then we get the offensive white people poker game.
Oh God.
Yeah. So Noah Emmerich, his character, well, he's the character he plays in every movie, which is white asshole.
He is awful. So like they were straight. Everyone's going to be racist in this movie, but you're going to be the most racist.
Well, I mean, Nick Cage's character isn't really open to anybody, doesn't hate everybody, but just doesn't talk to anybody. Generally unlikable.
Mhm.
So they had to make almost every other person around him much worse than him so that he, by comparison, would look good.
Right. Yeah. No, that is an ongoing trend in a lot of his movies, right?
Yeah.
Where everyone else has to be the bigger jerk so he
And
can
in
be the
this
hero.
one, Noah Emmerich is the worst of the worst
Absolutely.
in the group.
Yeah.
He makes jokes. He constantly calling them chief. He makes jokes, that are I mean, I'm not Native American, but I can imagine that for those people it would be offensive, and they
And it's certainly not stuff you or I are ever going to say.
no, I would never do that. I mean,
You
it
know.
was clearly thinks of them as lesser people than him. So yeah, and that's throughout this movie. That's the way he is.
Mhm.
But yeah, my next note is peak muscle Cage because he looked good in this movie. Um, we get to his first kind of flashback to what happened. He basically, I don't really know what triggers it, but he gets triggered a few times to where he's getting these flashbacks, and we know he's getting a flashback because he starts sweating heavily.
Mhm.
And then he like that happens before it starts flashing back for the audience, but the character is obviously going through something. Um, and then we get a party because they find out that they're getting shipped out after 4 weeks or whatever. And so they decide to party this last night before they ship out. And Nicolas Cage broods the whole party.
He broods the whole movie.
Basically, yeah.
You know.
He's like Batman except like bad version of Batman. But the nurse does come up and like try and converse with him. And she's like, "Oh, you didn't buy me a drink before you ship out." And so I'm pretty sure that he isn't buying her a drink anyway. He just asks for rum.
It's
And
unclear.
I don't think
May-
they were paying for any of this alcohol.
I mean, it's all through the military, so maybe they just like know who it is and it gets docked from their pay or something.
Maybe. But she's clearly into him and he is not into her. That
I
really
know.
shows.
She's very into him, writing, letters later in the movie, and yeah, he is just totally
And she's like,
disconnected.
she wants to make the most of this night before they leave, but he's like, no, I need a brood.
Yeah.
So
Not too many men in that outfit would have gone
that's
that
probably why
direction.
she likes him so much, because
Maybe.
people want what they can't have.
Mm, that's deep.
Um, so they ship out, and they're supposed to be. What was the place they were supposed to be taking? Saipan or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's
I
right.
can't remember. They were supposed to be
I think
taking
that's
this
right.
small area, um, to because they needed to control that to move in closer to like where the ultimate goal to conquer was. And so they land there and they start invading. And I will say, on this movie's credit, the wide shots of like combat and just general war were really impressive. It
Yeah.
was a lot of like, again, like we had at the beginning, some kind of rolling landscape shots, but this time there's like a lot of actors on the ground shooting, practical explosions, CGI planes, but they moved in a way that you can't really tell they're CGI. Um, but like but the amount of people that they had that they were filming, it did not look like there was really a lot of CGI people. It was
No,
pretty much all real people.
it was they were very nice set pieces, large set pieces. They, out in the real world, like these were physical locations. This was not done in a sound stage. And you're right. I think that the digital effects were at a minimum here.
Yeah. And I will say that the movie could have been about 45 minutes shorter if it wasn't for all these just gratuitous long war shots. I mean, they were
Yeah,
really long. It was impressive shots, don't get me wrong, but you can only watch so many minutes of people dying and getting exploded and, planes flying by before it's like, okay, we can probably move on to the next bit of actual story.
it was a lot. There were, each one of these battles seems to go on for like 20 minutes.
Right.
You
But it's
know,
not really progressing it. A lot of them aren't really progressing anything with anybody that we're meant to care about. It's literally just to show off these big sets.
well, maybe it's supposed to just show the sheer like death toll involved and the brutality of it. Because I mean, people are losing limbs. Some guys lost heads.
Yeah.
Like
My
it's a
next
pretty
note is about a
brutal.
guy that got stuck in barbed wire,
Oh God, that was
and
awful.
they tried to free him, but then the people trying to free him and him all got shot.
Yeah, that was
Um,
awful.
and yeah, if it's to show the brutality, then I mean, I give it a little bit of a pass, but I don't think they need to do that over and over and over again, because at a certain point you're just beating a dead horse.
No, I'm with you. I don't know because I mean, World War II from our perspective is kind of two different wars, right? There's the European War and there's the Pacific War, and the Pacific War was extremely brutal and difficult, and we did not do well over there.
Right.
A lot of people died. And yeah, maybe if that was the point, then then I guess that was successful.
I will say that some of the stunt people that they hired for this really went for it. Like,
Yeah,
kudos to John Woo's stunt team. And I mean, that's not everybody knows that he had one of the best stunt teams out there. But there were guys that they would throw themselves on the ground. I would literally see their body fold like with their legs behind their head and then fall back after just like launching themselves headfirst into the ground. They really went for it. So I mean, if there was a stunt Oscar, I feel like this movie would have definitely been a contender.
agreed. Yeah, a lot of that looked very difficult, very painful, and like I said, it was
Brutal.
real. These were real things,
Yeah.
hitting real ground. Like maybe they had put some padding under the dirt or something, but like these are not gym floors
Well, you
that
can only throw yourself face first into the ground into a mat. I mean, like a mat only helps so much.
right, right.
You're still throwing, 100 plus pounds of your body, depending on how much you weigh, straight forward, and you're still putting that impact on your body. So hard enough that your legs are just like naturally thrown in a way that looks contorted. So yeah, I mean, there
Yeah.
was one shot in particular that I was like, "Holy crap, that stunt guy really went for it."
Hmm.
It's a good on you, man. But that was gnarly,
Thankless
um,
job.
for sure. Um, my next note is flamethrower, because they have like one guy in their group that carries a
Yeah.
flamethrower the whole time, and he is just constantly roasting people. And later we get like a scene where you kind of get some downtime for the group, and he's talking about how he like used to grill out when he was at home, or he hopes to. When he gets home, he wants to like have a barbecue, but for now he's just grilling people. But then it's like really dark and his eyes like kind of like it's setting in that he's grilling people right now. Like it's pretty dark.
Well, because there's this in that scene, there's this moment where the audience is shown who the people really are, and about how, a lot of people, they signed up to defend their country, and they weren't necessarily thinking exactly what that might mean on the
Right.
ground. And then you have, Chick's character, Noah Emmerich's character, who's, he's the lifer, and his dad and his grandpa, and and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it was Harrigan was the flamethrower guy, and yeah, he was just so kind of broken.
Yeah.
Point.
Which a lot of people probably were at that point. But while they're doing this big like war shot, uh, it kind of establishes what the code talkers are doing. They're trying to give coordinates for where these ships. You might be knowing where I'm going with this, Derek, but they are giving coordinates to where these like ships offshore should be targeting with their giant like mortar guns, whatever they
Mhm.
are. But so we get these shots after they give them the coordinates of it, what looks to be stock footage of these ships that they added really bad looking shooting animations to. Did you notice this too? I mean, it looked terrible, and there wasn't just like one quick shot of it. There was like 10.
I think terrible might be a little strong. They were definitely the worst shots in the movie.
Dude, it looked like they literally just had stock footage, and
Yeah.
they tried to make these ships look like they were shooting when they weren't actually,
No,
and
I
it
think
was
that
not
that's fair.
successful.
I think that's fair. I think, it was there's no real good way to replicate those unless, you're making the Pearl Harbor movie, I guess, which was made around this time, wasn't it?
Not too far. I think it was a little newer than this, but
Was it? Hmm.
maybe. I don't remember honestly.
But I guess rebuilding those boats was just not in the budget,
Yeah, that all
you
their
know.
budget went to 20-minute, helicopter shots of war.
Well, they had like
Um,
tanks rolling around, all those
that's
big
true.
cannons, and yeah, I think they just kind of ran out of
Practical
money.
explosions, yeah.
Yeah.
So then we get this scene with Nick Cage having to, or somebody needs to run up to this like bunker where they're dug in and throw a satchel charge into this bunker. And Nick's like, I'm gonna do it. And he leaves Yazi behind and starts running up to this bunker with this satchel that has explosives in it. And it's a pretty brutal scene. I mean, he has to kill like a couple of guys getting up there and then throw this thing. Like he misses with the first throw,
Yeah.
and then one of the guys comes out of the bunker to try and grab it, and he shoots that, or he grabs that guy and kind of pushes him out again out of his hiding spot to in front of his own bunker where his guys shoot him. And while they're distracted shooting their own guy, he grabs the satchel and like throws it in there. And it's just kind of establishing for me that he doesn't care if he lives or dies at this point, and he's just doing what needs to be done. And that kind of theme is going on through the movie. He either he thinks he's invincible or he just doesn't care if he dies.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's the latter. He does. It's not actually. I don't even know that he doesn't care. I think he actively wants to get killed out there because then
Yeah.
he doesn't have to worry about anything anymore. He doesn't have to worry about protecting Ben or not protecting Ben or protecting the code or not. He doesn't have to have the flashbacks anymore. None of that. I think he's trying, at least at some point in the movie, trying to die.
Yeah.
I did have kind of a problem with that scene because the fuse is so long on that bag that if he had made the throw the first time,
They could have
like,
just thrown it back out at him.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
um, I just had a thought, by the way, about the boats. Because you're right, like they are the worst effects in the movie. I wonder because this movie did have like a lot of reshoots involved and stuff. I wonder if the original cut didn't have the actual boats and people didn't understand where the explosions came from. So
Could
they had
be.
to slot it in late.
Could be.
That's a theory I have.
You know. So after this whole big war for the day, then they've defeated whatever they were trying to defeat, and they've taken the ground that they were trying to take that day. And we get the most generic campfire war chat ever. It's like if you think of any of the tropes that people do when they're sitting around a campfire, soldiers sitting around a campfire after a battle, uh, the discussions they might have that are tropey, then they happened in this discussion. And I do want
Yeah.
to mention you kind of brought it up earlier too, but throughout I don't think I have any notes on it, but throughout this whole movie, he's getting constant mail calls from this woman
Hmm.
that was
Yeah.
at the thing. It never pans out to anything. He sometimes reads the letter, sometimes he doesn't read the letter.
He never writes back.
He never writes back. He never really acknowledges anything. Anytime somebody sees him like looking at the letter, they make a comment about how if they put effort into writing the letter, then he should at least read it.
Hmm.
But that doesn't seem to make him feel any kind of way. So
Nope, it's weird. We did kind of skip over Peter Stormare's character
yeah,
a little bit. I love Peter Stormare, except when he's trying to not have an accent,
yeah, it's rough.
which is what he was doing in this movie. And
And that's
like
probably why we haven't discussed him because he wasn't really noteworthy in any way in this role.
he has like one or two decent scenes. I just, if you're gonna hire him for who he is. He's great when you just let him be who he is,
Right.
you
Yeah,
know.
this role
But
is not like his best by any means.
no.
So then we get the bath scene.
Oh
Uh,
God.
Yazi has gone off after this battle to go clean himself. This is the following. So actually the night before, Yazi and Whitehorse do. There's like every time they go camping or like camping, they set up for the night. Whatever. They're just going camping, guys.
It's just
No, but
camping.
every time they set up for the night, after a long day of killing people, they have like a graveyard set up essentially for all
Mhm.
the people that they lost. And this first night, this is really the first time that Yazi has been around this. So it's kind of jarring to him, but him and Whitehorse do I think they call it like a protection ceremony of some kind,
Yes. Hmm.
to deal with the spirits of the deceased and things like that. And everybody's kind of watching them, wondering what's going on. And that does kind of come back later, but after that scene, they're spreading ashes on each other's face, or on just on Yazi's face. I don't think Whitehorse gets any ash on his face,
No,
but
he was like Whitehorse was like performing the ceremony.
right. But yeah, then the next morning, Yazi is going to go bathe, and so he goes off on his own and takes a bath. And when he comes out, Noah Emmerich's character, the most racist guy in the world, says that he should kill him because he looks like a Japanese person, like the slang term for a Japanese person
Yeah.
in this time, and that he could have killed him and nobody would have even thought about it.
I
And
mean,
he
look,
like
the
won't let him
scene
take
is
his clothes.
no. The scene is framed like obviously something bad is going to happen. I guess I was overly optimistic and thought it was just like some Japanese soldiers were going to come across him and then Nick was going to have to save the day. But no, it was worse.
Yeah, and they end up getting into a fist fight. It's a pretty rough scene in general. But yeah, that's that one. I don't know how deep you want to dive into that, but
Well, like, so Nick is like standing off to the side. Joe Enders is standing off. He watches a good chunk of it and doesn't intervene, which kind of pissed me off because it's like, what does this guy want to be? Does he want to not get close to Ben because he's worried he'll have to kill him later? Or is he legitimately just an asshole?
see, I took it as because there's been a couple, or there's at least one point before this where Yazi has been in a situation where he should have killed somebody as a soldier and didn't, and Nick Cage's character had to save him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took this more as kind of he wanted to see what would happen when the chips were down. Uh,
I
and
see.
if Yazi would stand up for himself, if he would get to the point of being violent, or if he would just stand there and take it because he's
Gotcha.
scared. That's how
Gotcha.
I took it. Maybe that wasn't how it was intended. I don't know, but that's how I took it. So I thought it was a bit of a character defining moment
Yeah,
for Nick Cage's character.
that's a better take than what I had.
Yeah.
So I'll go with that.
Um, there was a scene earlier in the movie during the racist poker game where Whitehorse starts playing a flute. And
Mhm.
it's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful
Yeah.
music. But Christian Slater, they have this. He has this one offhanded comment where he's like, "Wow, that's beautiful," and he's looking for the person playing it, and he can't really see him. Well, later in the movie, at the point we're at now in the notes, Whitehorse is playing a flute again, and Christian Slater like walks up to him and is like just kind of listening. And so my next note was Christian Slater loves flute music. But really, Christian Slater is the guy in his company that plays harmonica
Yep,
to
there's
kind of
always one.
inspire people. Well, I mean, a lot, there's it's again another trope in war movies that somebody plays an instrument, whether it's a guitar or whatever, and like even in Starship Troopers, you
Yeah.
had the guy
Oh
playing
yeah.
like the electric violin that was
Uh-huh.
inspiring his people.
I
And so
wonder
yeah,
how real that is.
I think it's just a trope in movies. I think it would be inspiring if you had somebody that would play music to entertain. It would be a great team building thing. But in this movie, Christian Slater wants to play music with White Horse. They want to like somehow combine the flute and the harmonica, which never really works. It's mostly just like White Horse playing a song and then Christian Slater doing the same thing on harmonica, but they never really play in harmony because those two instruments just don't harmonize that well. And maybe that's a metaphor for the movie. But
Look at you.
but I don't think it's intended, but it could work, I guess, if you read really deeply into it. But
I mean, if this was
as
an
the movie
English
goes
class,
on, I mean, as the movie goes on, they do get in more harmony with each
yeah.
other. So
I
maybe
mean,
it is a bit of a metaphor.
because it does build up to their relationship's climax.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
So, I mean, you have a good point. Like, if this was a real film course in, at like a college or something, I'm sure that's what the professor would be
Yeah, I
trying to
mean,
say.
I'm surprised colleges aren't reaching out to me, honestly, trying to get me to teach these classes.
Ryan can guest teach.
That's right. That's right. Then we get Nick Cage dry swallowing pills again, which maybe that should be
Oh,
another box on
God.
the bingo card too, because he's done that in
Maybe.
several movies, and every time it just makes me cringe. But he also makes a kid dry swallow, or you think he's gonna make a kid dry swallow these pills, but then he ends up giving him some water, so you're a little bit better about it. But it looks like he's just gonna have the kid do it too. But that's just a small nitpick. But yeah, we've had in the last few movies we've done, it's happened several times.
No, I
So
can't. I can't do it. My grandpa used to take his pills that way. I hated it.
yeah, I think our audience is probably gonna get sick of that story.
Have I told that before? Have we talked
Yes,
about? We've
every
talked
time
about
we
this.
talk about dry
Jesus
swallowing
Christ!
pills,
All
you
right,
bring
I'm
that story
sorry.
up.
I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. It's all right. The amount of people that listen to this podcast, they probably haven't listened to two episodes in a row anyway, so or however many it's been. Um, my next note is friendly fire because it's a new day, so they're making another push. And as they're making this push, they discover that their own troops are firing like mortars onto them,
Yeah, really fucking them up.
really destroying their own people. So that's great. But
It
they're
it
trying to push into a position.
it did lead me to one question. Do these groups really only have one radio?
Well, those radios were big and heavy and probably kind of expensive to send out to a place with all that many explosions. So
I mean, they were traveling with two large trucks that were carrying men and at least one Jeep. They couldn't have an extra radio.
no, because those trucks were full of men and guns.
It just seems like the radio is so important in this movie. They have to go and get a radio two different times. That like if they just had an extra radio, problem
Yeah.
solved.
Yeah, well to that fact, when they're kind of running up to try and assault this position and they're under friendly fire, Yazi takes a hit near him and he says he's hit and he goes down. And then Nick Cage runs over and notices that it's just the radio that got hit, but it was apparently either very hot or there's acid leaking or something
Mm-hmm.
because he was talking about how his back was burning, but the clothes weren't burned or anything like that. So it must have just been heat from the
Yeah.
explosion. But yeah, he was not hit, but his radio was destroyed, which is important, as this fight goes on because they can't radio to their people and tell them that, hey, you guys are shooting us.
Mm-hmm.
So they get closer to where the place that they're trying to overtake, and Yazi is looking at one of the Japanese soldiers that had been killed, and says that, man, I do look like one of those Japanese people, which is what Noah Emmerich's character had said earlier in a kind of a racist way, but he's acknowledging this himself. I still don't think they really look similar,
I
but
don't think so either.
for the movie. So they steal this dead guy's clothes and dress him up in a Japanese uniform. And their plan is to take Nicolas Cage's character in like he's a prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, Nick Cage tells him the Japanese word for prisoner, so he speaks another language technically.
Yeah, he knows a lot of Japanese, it
Yeah,
turns
later
out.
on you see more,
You
but
know?
for now we know that for our Nikejo bingo, it just takes one word and we're good there. Um, so he brings them back. Somehow they sneak behind enemy lines. It's unclear exactly how that happened, but it was barely an inconvenience.
How
And they
long
get
how
behind
long were they walking,
they
you
went a
know?
long ways, but they get behind enemy lines, and Nick Cage is like, hit me, beat the shit out of me. It reminds me of the scene in Brooklyn Nine-Nine with the dude that's like Rosa's boyfriend, where he's like,
Pimento.
fighting is on the table. Like, you can use fire. Stabbing is a-okay. He's like
What's
trying
off
to get
limits?
right. You freaks just surprised me. Yeah, but he yeah, Adrian Pimento, great choice. But yeah, he's telling Yazzie to hit him and like beat the crap out of him and everything because he needs these guys to believe that, because there's like four guys that are like, "What are you doing here?" or whatever they're saying in Japanese. They're yelling at him in Japanese, wondering what's going on.
And
And
Ben does not know
he does
Japanese.
not speak.
So
He does not speak Japanese. He just knows the one word that Nick Cage told him. But Nick Cage, while they were setting up, snuck a pistol into the back of Benyazi's belt. And so at some point during this conversation, when he's getting the shit kicked out of him by these Japanese soldiers and his friend, he sneaks around the back and grabs the gun. It's just like a 1911, like a normal pistol, like a
yeah,
military pistol. And he just fucking unloads on these guys, kills these guys. Nobody can get a shot back on him. Then does like a barrel roll into the radio base that's dug into the ground
it's amazing.
and kills everybody in there, except for
Everybody.
one guy who Benyazi is fighting, and at one point is supposed to kill, but does he actually do it in this
This
point?
this time he does.
Okay, yeah, he
Yeah.
finally pulls the trigger and kills somebody.
Well, he uses the bayonet.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well,
Yeah.
pulls the trigger was a metaphorical, but
Sorry.
in a movie with guns, I can see how that'd be confusing. But they yes, and they do all this to get a radio because theirs got blowed up real good, and they need it to tell their people that they're shelling friendlies. So they get the radio and they pass that along, and they give them the coordinates for the new place to shell, and then they win again. They've moved this chess match further forward, and again it's another night of rest, I guess.
Nick's character is like the single greatest military soldier.
Military mind of all
Like
time. Yeah.
he's an amazing shot, like really he should have gone up against
What's
the
funny is
Predator.
he's actually a really terrible shot when you're watching him use the gun. Like his gun handling in this, I don't know how he went from Face Off. I mean, Face Off was more stylized and it wasn't great gunplay, but it was fun gunplay. But this movie, he's just looks like he's pointing randomly and shaking the gun up and down a lot. And it doesn't
Well,
look like he would actually hit anything.
maybe that's on purpose because like he's supposed to be out of equilibrium. We don't really know the extent of the drinking that he's doing because he is
Right, but
shown.
we're supposed to believe that without his equilibrium and everything, that he could still kill all these people with expert accuracy while he's like shaking the gun in random directions.
He's a great fucking Marine.
I mean, these are like what's the movie with the bending bullets? Wanted. This is like a
Equilibrium. Oh,
wanted situation where
wanted,
they
yeah.
can like bend the bullets around corners and stuff and
Oh
make it hit
god.
him. Um,
Angelina Jolie, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
she does show up later, but yeah, so he like right after this mission happens, some bigwig from the military comes up and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for Joe
Jeez.
Enders," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm Joe Enders. What's it to you?" And the guy's like, "I heard that you saved everybody's life today with no help from anyone else." And to his credit, he gives credit to Benyazi, and of course, nobody cares. He he gets awarded a medal on the spot and says, "Well, I couldn't have done it without Benyazi," but they don't give him a medal because he's also a racist asshole, I assume. And but that's the first time where you kind of see the shell break a little bit, where he's like does have feelings Because if he didn't have any feelings at all, he would have never given
Mhm.
credit to anybody else.
Yeah, I think that's true to an extent. I mean, we find out later that he just doesn't really care about medals and stuff like that, but I think he just finds the whole thing. He finds like just a bitter hilarity to the situation where they bring in these guys who are key to all of the strategic positioning in the Pacific Front, and nobody can treat them with any level of respect.
Right. Um, and one of the guys, I can't remember who was it, the flamethrower guy that died at this point, or who was it?
Nelly dies pretty around here, I think. I don't
Yeah,
think he's the flamethrower guy though.
one of the guys dies, and so and the guy previously had given a ring to
Yeah,
Mark Ruffalo's character, I think,
Nelly. Yeah.
and said, will you give this to my wife or whatever if something happens? And so also Nick Cage gives the medal
Hmm.
to Mark Ruffalo's character to give to his wife. Somehow Mark Ruffalo is the messenger for everybody in this movie.
Well, he seems to have been like really close to Nelly, right? He's kind of like the heart of the group, right? He's the soft one, he's the caring one, he's empathetic, he's never really shown to be racist in any way. He's shown to be welcoming, and all those types of things throughout. Whereas, so Harrigan, he's the flamethrower guy. He has like a spectacular death
Yeah, he does. But
later.
the loss of Nelly really affects the whole group. Um, I think bringing it up again during that protection ritual that they did the next day, Nicolas Cage's character asks about that. I think it was either him or Christian Slater asks about that ritual, and they say that they're helping the spirits, and blah blah blah, and whichever one of them it was is something like, oh, you see spirits, and
Oh,
they have this
ghosts.
conversation about seeing ghosts
It
and
was
stuff like that.
Nick. Yeah.
So then at this point, Nick has like a huge, like comically huge bottle of alcohol.
Saki.
Is that what it was? I don't know
Yeah.
my alcohols, but yeah, this
Well, they
bottle is
say it. They say
big.
it in the movie.
It's
That
it's a
it's all rice sake. It's Japanese.
right, which obviously since they're in Japan, they steal that from, Japanese people that they kill. But he has a huge bottle. Like as big as it is on him, I mean, I don't know. It's big.
Yeah.
I
Oh
can't
yeah.
emphasize enough the size of this bottle. It is not what I expected. And he has like a whole crate of it.
Well,
But at
and
this point, it's
for,
implied that he's drank a lot of it.
he's drank like half the bottle. And for those who don't know, sake is extremely high alcohol content.
Yeah, it's
It's
rice wine.
not it's not like regular wine.
Right.
Right. So you're not supposed to just take glasses of it. You have
Right.
these tiny little cups.
Like shot
Like,
glasses, basically. Yeah.
yeah,
But
exactly. And
he's
you're
drinking it like straight out of the bottle.
straight. You might as well have had a paper bag around it.
Pretty much, yeah. And so eventually he drinks a little bit with Benyazi, but then he starts walking off and says he's going to bed. And once he gets to the grave area, he starts seeing spirits himself, kind of. I mean, he's hearing spirits more than anything, but we also get like a voiceover of his love interest, which I thought was weird. But then Benyazi sees what's going on and goes over to help him. And I don't know if you noticed this, but like he has a backpack kind of thing on, like a rucksack or something, and he knocks over one of the grave markers in the scene. And
No, I didn't
I was like,
notice
oh,
that.
that was not intended. I'm pretty sure.
Aw.
But yeah, it was funny. Um, yeah, so the love interest voiceover and he helps Nick Cage to bed and does a protection ritual with Nick.
Well, he
Um,
tries to.
well, he tries to, but then Nick is like, no, don't do that to me anymore. I'm still awake enough. But then he takes some ash from a cigarette and kind of finishes the ritual, spreading it onto Nick. Um,
In this scene, though, Nick almost tells Ben what his real orders are.
yeah, almost.
Almost.
So the next day they move into this village,
Oh God.
and they're told that there's no resistance here. There's been no movement from anything. So this is supposed to be a peaceful thing, but all the people in the village are like terrified.
Hmm.
of these Americans that are coming in. The kids are like crying and screaming. And all we really see is the soldiers, for the most part, being really nice to these kids. Like Nick Cage, he goes into a building with a mom and a kid that's sick, and he gives the kid some of his pain medication and gives the mom like the bottle of pain medication so that the kid can have more. Um,
Yeah.
and then we see like a guy giving chocolate to a girl that was crying, and basically it seems like the soldiers are being really nice to these people, and they don't like the kids being scared of them and stuff like that. And Nick Cage does like a art piece in a bunch of flour, which is out of nowhere.
Well,
But
no, so because it follows as they're walking to the village, they're having a conversation about what they're going to do after the war, right? And they've all got a thing. Some guy's going to he's going to own a fleet of taxi cabs. Somebody else is going to be a rancher, right? All this other stuff. And Nick doesn't think about it. He's like, whatever.
yeah,
And this is our way of learning. Oh, he's actually an artist,
yeah,
right? I think, I
because he
think
does
the
finger painting in a bunch of flour.
I think it's supposed to show that like what war does to a person kind of concept.
Yeah,
But since we don't get to see him before the war, it's just it's kind of a too little too late type of situation.
right. Um, So then we get a scene of Nick Cage going to Peter Stormare's character, who's kind of like he's like the general in charge or whatever,
Yeah.
and saying that he wants out. He can't do this mission. He can't do his orders. He wants out. And obviously Peter Stormare is like that's not happening. And in the middle of this conversation, we get like a multi-pronged assault on this village from the Japanese. I mean, they're killing people. It's a surprise that everybody's relaxing. All the soldiers are relaxing. So it's very easy for the Japanese to kill all these people. Um, Christian Slater gets decapitated at one point. So there's kind of an important part there, I guess,
Yeah.
where Christian Slater and Whitehorse are fighting all these Japanese soldiers that come in. And these scenes are probably the most John Woo-ish of the movie. They're like kind of close quarter combat rather than like large scale war.
Hmm.
But they're fighting these guys and killing these guys. And at one point it seems like maybe they got through it, but then more guys come, and Christian Slater has a moment where he's got a gun to Whitehorse and it is saying that he's got to save the code, protect the code, and that's his mission.
Hmm.
And more guys are coming in, and instead of shooting Whitehorse, he shoots these guys and keeps fighting, and eventually he gets decapitated. And which the quick shot of the decapitated Christian Slater head that didn't actually look like him at all was pretty funny. Um,
Yeah, they probably could have just cut that half a
right.
second of
There was
footage.
no need for that at all.
No.
But it was good for a laugh. But Whitehorse kind of gets away out of this room. But he gets subdued quickly by, or no, he doesn't get out of this room. He
Mm-mm.
gets there. More soldiers come in and they're beating the shit out of him. And they're going to kill him, but one of them realizes that he's one of the code talkers,
Potentially. Yeah.
Windtalkers. They think maybe he's what code. So like five of them are grabbing him and trying to take him to like like a holding area.
Hmm.
And so Nick Cage is fighting for his life out in the middle. The flamethrower guy gets blown up. People are
Yeah.
dying left. Basically, everybody you've cared about this entire movie is dying at this point.
Almost.
Um, and Nick Cage sees Whitehorse being taken away by these Japanese soldiers, and they share like a knowing look. I feel like, but Nick Cage pulls the grenade out, and I felt like Whitehorse gave him like a nod,
Yeah, I was
but it's a little
confused by this.
ambiguous.
Yeah.
I was like, Whitehorse is ready. This he knows what has to happen at this point. And so Nick Cage throws the grenade and it blows up and it kills all the soldiers and Whitehorse. But it seemed like in the moment Whitehorse was okay with what was happening and almost like gave a look of consent.
So I thought that, but then when Nick throws the grenade, Whitehorse kicks a guy like into the grenade. At least the way it was shot, it looked like that. So I was very confused by it, frankly. So I'm not sure if we were supposed to think that this was all good or not.
Yeah, it's a weird scene. But I took away that he was okay. White Horse was okay with this, and that he understood what was about to happen.
Okay.
But they end up surviving this battle, kind of. A lot of people down, but they fight him off. And White Horse, or not White Horse, he's dead. Benyazi comes around looking for White Horse, and Nick Cage's character is like, he's right over there. And he walks over and sees him dead and starts crying. And then, of course, Nicolas Cage's character goes, "Oh, I killed him." And there's you would have thought he would have been like, "I killed him," but he understood what the mission had to be. It was his choice, whatever. But he didn't do that. He just says, "I killed him." And so, of course, Yazi goes crazy, not crazy, but he's in a rage and grabs a gun and is ready to kill Nick Cage's character. And Nick Cage is like, "Do it, do it." It's like the Predator scene with Arnie where he's like, "Do it, finish it." But he can't do it. They stop. I think Mark Ruffalo at this point stops him. Somebody stops him. But now there's like a tension between the two of them.
Yeah, Ben like hates him at this point because the big difference between Ben and Charlie Whitehorse is that Charlie's a lot older. He's more kind of cautious of white people and isn't as optimistic or bright-eyed, right? Ben is much more of, looking at this fresh, big, bright world ahead of him kind of thing. And I think this kind of breaks Ben, at least
Yeah,
for a time.
it does break him because he's like a totally different character after this.
Yeah.
But they get orders to after this battle to go up to this final ridge that they need to take to retake this whole island or whatever. And they send Nicolas Cage's company up to go. They haven't seen any movement on this ridge, but they send them up there to go check and see what's up there.
And
And
there's stuff up there.
big surprise, there's stuff up there. So on their way, they walk into a minefield.
Oh God.
And these are like the worst mines ever because they have big things sticking out of the ground, which was probably accurate for the time. I don't know, but it seems like you would want that under the ground for the mine. But yeah, like little nipples sticking out of the ground, and they're like, Shh, guys, don't move. We don't know where these mines are at." And of course, Ben is pissed off at everything right now, so he's just like walking forward through it, even after they say stop, and he just keeps going. And yeah, my next note was the explosion budget for this must be huge, which I'm sure it
Yeah,
was.
this movie lost a lot of money.
I believe it. And so they get up to this area, and I mean they're fighting, and they've got to get to this radio, and it's kind of a repeat of some of the battles we've seen. And Nicolas Cage ends up getting shot. So does basically everybody, except for Benyazi. Well, he gets shot, but he doesn't die, like not a life-threatening shot. Um, but yeah, Nick Cage kind of protects him with his body and dies.
All for the radio,
Yeah, for the radio. If they just carried two, it would have been fine.
it would have been fine. But Ben gets shot eventually in both legs, and so Nick has to like throw him over his shoulders. And look, yes, Ben does end or not Ben, Nick does end up dying, but he like is outrunning a whole group of people who are just flurrying bullets, and he gets hit like twice.
Yeah, but he gets
Um,
he gets Ben to safety.
yeah.
Well, relatively safe, the relative safety. But yeah, he sacrificed himself to save Ben. So he ends his life in a sacrificial, way. He did do his duty without having to kill Ben. So then we kind of flip forward to now Ben is out of the war and he has a kid. And
Well, he had a kid the whole time.
oh yeah, that's right. It was just like a baby when he
Yeah.
left, but now it's like a older walking kid.
Well, because it's the movie is very like vague about how much time is passing.
Yeah,
So I think it's supposed to be like 2 years.
yeah. Which he survived everything after that, apparently. But yeah,
Well,
he's
I think
telling
he
us.
was sent home because he couldn't walk anymore.
Well, that's probably true. But he's just now deciding to tell his son about Nicolas Cage. Well, probably more about Joe Enders, but maybe a little bit about Nicolas Cage too. And then we get like the splash screen at the end that just says the code was never broken.
That's right. It's true. It's very
Historical
true.
fact.
I mean, it's supposedly true that I've heard.
So that's
Um,
the movie.
that's the movie. I mean, the big kind of climax moment, right, is in that final fight. Nick, Ben, Chick, and Mark Ruffalo are like the only four guys left, I think. And Nick Nick's big thing in the movie is that in the beginning he followed orders and held his ground and he was the only survivor. And so now he's not going to do that. He's going to pull back so nobody else dies. And it's supposed to be a big growth moment for him,
Yeah.
but then they kill him off anyway, so it's just kind
Right.
of irrelevant.
Yeah. And that's the whole movie. It's just like very depressing. Everybody
Very.
dies. You know, the only I guess it's not supposed to be depressing because the code didn't get broken, but anything that the movie has set up to make you care about a character, they probably died.
Well, that's the thing. Like, we have a square on our bingo that's a white savior movie. I wouldn't call this a white savior movie, but it is a white perspective movie.
For sure.
Right. Right. This is supposed to be about the Navajo code talkers, but it's really about the white guy who tried to protect a Navajo code
Right.
talker. Right.
Yeah, I didn't check the box for White Savior movie either, but yeah, there was points when I was like, man, I mean it should still count, but
It got close a few times, but
yeah.
they kept Joe Enders being enough of a prick, I think, to stop that from happening. But yeah, I mean, overall, this is just it's a deeply depressing war movie, which like, and the more you know about what actually happened in the Pacific, the more depressing it is,
Right.
and so it's a sad movie that also lost a ton of money. It's estimated it lost 70 million dollars.
It's a lot.
And that the initial cut, the studio hated it and made John Woo re-edit the whole film, which may have to do with why it doesn't feel very much like a John Woo film. Maybe the original cut did, but it didn't feel
Maybe.
like a World War II film. I don't know.
So sometimes on these movies we go through and we read some online reviews to kind of give us some perspective before we rate it. So this person says 10 out of 10. We feel that Windtalkers is very good. Although the movie is not very real, this is act. The movie focus on the feeling about the war, not about the weapon. We feel good about watch it. And the movie got the very good box office here, more than the movie Spider-Man. I'm not sure what numbers they were reading.
Maybe based on how that's written, I'm going to go ahead and say that's a person who is not a native English speaker and not in the United States. That's going to be
Potentially.
my takeaway there.
Vicky SM says, this is an excellent movie. I really enjoyed this movie. I saw it 3 times in the theater, and the
Wow.
best time that I had seeing it was in a little town in northern Arizona, which is Navajo Nation country. It was a delight to see the movie with the Navajo Native Americans. There was a lot to be learned while viewing with them. They laughed in places that were not translated to the English language. I rate this up there as being one of the top 10 movies I've ever seen.
Wow. Okay.
I thought this was a great movie, plenty of action, and a great plot. If you like action, then this is the movie. It is a great story. It makes you think about the wars we have had and what our soldiers went through to give us freedom. Everybody must see it. So there's some 10 out of 10s. There's a lot of 1 out of 10s too. On the opposite. $140 million budget for this movie. Please do not try to imagine how good it could have been, how much good could have been done in the world, or indeed in the USA with that amount of money. There seems to be only one organization in this world capable of spending more money than this movie with less result for the good of mankind, the U.S. Army.
Oh, Jesus.
Accustomed to routinely spending enough money several times a year to feed all the starving people in the world. Just do the math if you don't believe me. Do we have a conspiracy here to keep the world both dumb and poor? If so, considering the box office results, the former has not yet been achieved. Do not ponder, do not think, and do not watch this movie. That's a pretty great review.
Oh my God.
This one's from Chippy One. Unrealistic. A movie from Gaga Land. Fake warplanes bombing fake landscapes. Unrealistic depiction of the actual place. The real island does not look anything like what he has shown. Why would a serious director not do research about the topic? How can a director expect movie viewers to take the movie seriously if he does not bother to make a serious effort? troops attacking over open ground, troops failing to seek cover, troops standing up when shot at. The director must live in Gaga land and use a lot of magic mushrooms. He has no idea how a real war should be fought or how to portray it in a realistic manner. He might be good at children's movie or cartoons, but it is not evident in this movie.
I don't think John Woo has ever done a children's movie or a cartoon. That's
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Nessie Hunter says there should be a 0 on the vote thing. This is actually the worst film ever made, and I pity anyone as foolish as me to buy the film solely due to Slater's contribution and the fact that some of Woo/Cage films are quite entertaining, e.g., Face Off. From the start, this film was obviously going to be the biggest pile of shite you've ever seen. Firstly, from the exaggerated and famous Yankee screams in the camp of woo and yeah, which is the most annoying sound known to man. Could any of you Yanks tell me if people actually do that? Also, the legendary best mate dying in her arms scene from the start, and then hideously Cage yells. I hate to repeat this, no, 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 every time makes me cringe. I was kind of distracted and shocked by the entire movie that I didn't really concentrate on the rest of it, only the completely exaggerated war scenes, the invincibility of Cage, and his ability to win everything by himself. Also, his eardrum injury didn't seem to affect his combat skills at all. Amazing. To conclude, anyone who recommends this movie is a torture merchant and should face the consequences of watching it again.
Jesus Christ.
People are pretty brutal about
that
this
is
movie.
brutal.
I mean, any jokes that I think I could make about this movie will not, stand up to the reviews that have been written about this movie. And
no,
what's funny is that it's not really rated that bad on IMDb. It's a 6.1 out of 10, which is probably better than the average Nick Cage movie we watch.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it's a very middle of the road film. We'll get to that. There is one nice thing about the movie that I just want to call out, and that is the score. James Horner did the score. For those of you who don't know, Horner's done like 100, almost 200 films. Things like Aliens, Cocoon, Commando. He did some Star Trek. He's done some kids stuff like an American Tale. For example, Land Before Time, Field of Dreams, Glory. Like he's done a million things, and so it is a nice score. It's a very James Horner quiet score throughout the film. I did enjoy that, but the rest of the movie is fine. Adam Beach is a good looking dude. I mean, kind of the heartthrob of the movie, I suppose.
I mean, there's a lot of good looking dudes in this movie. Christian
Are
Slater,
yeah, I guess.
Nick Cage.
Wow.
Mark Ruffalo. I mean, there's a lot of good looking dudes in this movie.
Mark's not my type.
Okay.
No offense. It's not my type.
I mean, luckily, handsomeness of the cast does not really factor into our rankings.
Should we add a score for that?
I'm good.
All right, let's grade the movie. Let's do this. So we grade our movies on two different scales: overall quality and overall caginess. 0 to 20, 20 high, 0 low. Do you want to go first on this one?
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, I think I put this movie at like a 11. I think that it was in the realm of like the average Nick Cage movie because of some of like the interesting like war shots. Even though they were gratuitous, they were interesting to watch, and like the stunt performances were really good. So I think it gets an extra point for me for that. But yeah, I think right in the middle of the road is where this movie belongs.
I agree with you. I'm going right in the middle of the road, though. I was giving it a 10 on quality, mainly for the same reasons, right? There are some really nice set pieces. They clearly put a lot of work into those sequences, but they're too long. There's too much of them. The story just doesn't really hold together for me. So that's that. Caginess, I mean, there's not a lot. Like, just because he yells doesn't make it cagey.
Right.
I actually think the caginess was quite low. I don't want to go too low. It's not Joe or Pig. So I'm thinking maybe like a 4.
Yeah, I was thinking like a 3. So
okay,
we're in the ballpark.
Cool. So that gives us a 10.5 on quality and a 3.5 on caginess. So next up, we have to just figure out which movie joins our wheel o cage. So we spin our wheel to find out which movie we're going to talk about each episode. So Windtalkers comes off the wheel, and replacing it is a movie I've never heard of before called Amos and Andrew.
I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so that joins the wheel. So to find out which Nicolas Cage movie we're talking about next, you'll have to watch The Wheel O' Cage. You can go to comingofcage.com for that. You, of course, can subscribe to the Coming of Cage podcast on your podcast app of choice. We have our links at comingofcage.com. You can also watch us on the Derrico Studios YouTube channel. You can see our faces here as we talk about that. Ryan, is there anything else about Windtalkers?
I think we pretty much covered it.
Awesome. All right. Well, then that is going to be it for us. Thank you for joining us. We are the Coming of Cage podcast. We'll catch you next time. Hello and welcome back to the coming. I'm going to wait for a second.
Okay. You do that.
Well, I don't want all like you're doing your hair and everything. That'll end up on the video.
To get it out of my face.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Unless you want that on our YouTube.
No, I don't care. I've probably done worse.
Well, fair enough.
Make it stylish here.
Maybe I'll throw this on the end as a stinger.
This is the bane of having hair.
I wouldn't know.
I know. That's why I brought it up. I know you're sensitive.
Oh, very. Yeah. Very sensitive about my hair. All right. Let's do this.